momento aqui a Malena 202 trazendo aqui pra vocês no nosso canal mais uma gameplay com certeza mais do que épica. E dessa vez, meu povo, estamos aqui de volta na nossa série de The Stanley Parable, que foi uma série que começou essa semana no canal. Se você não viu ainda, aqui embaixo na descrição tá o link pro primeiro episódio da série. E vocês gostaram muito, queria agradecer ao gigante feedback que teve. Foram mais de 13 mil likes. Muito obrigado mesmo, galera. Mas então, vamos lá. Seguinte, se você não assistiu o último episódio, eu não vou te explicar a história porque é muito longa. Vai lá, assiste e depois volta pra cá, certo? Agora você que assistiu, você que é ligado aqui nas coisas do canal, você tá manjando, né? Tá manjando como é que funciona. Então, eu tenho a opção de entrar naquela sala pra desligar o controle da mente ou tentar achar outra opção, né? Essas são as minhas opções. Mas eu acho que eu vou entrar na sala do controle da mente mesmo, que tá offline, Mind Control Either Waiting Input. Vamos lá então. Vamos chegar no rolê. A porta não fechou ainda.
And when at last he found the source of the room's power, he knew it was his duty, his obligation, to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
Tá, o sistema já tá desligado. Vocês viram lá fora que o sistema tava desligado. O sistema tava desligado. Logo, eu vou dar um off aqui, cara. Medinho. O que eu fiz? E muitos de vocês, galera, falaram pra mim. Eita! Eu tô mexendo.
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty.
Eita merda, tô vendo só uns risquinhos ali.
He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him. For it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing.
Eita.
Stanley stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze.
Que brisa é essa?
The feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path.
Eu tô na Vila dos Hobbits, mano.
This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Se esse for o fim do jogo, eu vou ficar puta. Sério? Sério mesmo? Que esse era um dos finais do jogo? Porque o jogo, pelo que vocês falaram pra mim, tem 24 finais. Eu vou ficar bolada. De verdade. Muito. Olha lá, vamos ver aqui agora. Que vai carregar. O Stanley tava feliz porque abriu uma porta gigante pra ele. Eu voltei pro trabalho. Ok.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Eu tenho a chance de tentar fazer um outro final. Zica! Então a gente vai, mano. Vou tentar fazer todos os finais. Esse primeiro final foi meio bosta.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Da outra vez a gente entrar na direita. Eu vou ir pra esquerda mesmo. Vou pra esquerda mesmo. Vamos ver o que aguarda a gente aqui agora. Aqui, salinha de reunião.
There was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Tá, a gente subiu da outra
Coming to a
vez.
staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Vamos descer então. Vamos descer, vamos descer. Eu não quero não. Tem um carro aqui.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations.
Que doideira.
For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down?
Oh, é meu!
Doors close automatically behind him wherever he went.
Agora tá mais
And for that
doido.
matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it.
Okay.
I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Eu tô voando!
He imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking?
Pode crer.
Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley.
Que doideira, velho. Tô bugando.
I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream.
Eu tô bugada!
He closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want.
Quem quer ficar
I
apertando
want my
botões?
apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Abre o olho. Tô na mesma merda. Essa história tá mais legal.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice?
Tá tudo vermelho. Tá porra, que isso, mano? Ficar no cantinho. Ah, não, mano. Ah, não, mano. Tô com medo de jogar isso aqui.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Eita!
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal.
Que porra é essa, cara?
I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Outro final? Esse foi legal. Esse foi louco, esse foi bacana, esse foi zica. O Stanley tava delirando louco. Aí a questão é, ele tava delirando já na rua ou ele saiu de dentro de onde ele tava e foi pra rua e morreu na rua? Eu vou jogar todos os finais, galera. Eu vou jogar todos os finais disso aqui, certo? Então é o seguinte, o episódio de hoje aqui de The Stanley Parable vai ficando por aqui. Se você gostou, não esqueça de deixar o seu like. Se gostou mais ainda, compartilhe nas suas redes sociais. E diga pra mim, certo? Se você quer ver os outros finais do jogo. Porque eu acho que esse aqui que é a graça. Tu vai fazendo o seu. Tem várias alternativas, tá ligado? A gente pode fazer, tipo, o mesmo caminho que a gente fez da outra vez. Só que em vez de entrar na Mind Control, a gente vai pro Escape e a gente vai fazer... Louco! Louco! Certo? Então hoje vai ficando por aqui. Esse foi o segundo vídeo do dia. O primeiro tá aqui embaixo na descrição. Muito obrigado por assistir. Like, boladão se você gostou. Um beijo, loira. E eu fui!